Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of the 2022 Higher Education Climate Leadership Summit. My name is Nicole Tarico. I'm a program director at the Intentional Endowments Network, and I'm very happy to welcome you. I'm going to be covering a few logistics before we dive in here today. So following our land acknowledgement statement at the opening of the summit, we'd like to again recognize the longstanding history of colonialism that has brought us to reside on Indigenous lands and reflect on our place within that history. We've shared a link to our land acknowledgement resource page in the chat so you can learn more about our journey and the actions we're taking to meaningfully support Indigenous communities across our organizations. So with this in mind, I acknowledge that I'm joining you all today from Western Massachusetts, the ancestral homelands of the Mohican people, who are the Indigenous people of this land. And I invite the speakers of this session, as well as our participants, to, as you introduce yourselves, kindly state the lands that you're calling in from. So for those that haven't participated in sessions like this in the past, this is one of two lightning round presentations we'll be hosting at this year's summit. During this session, you will hear 6 presentations happening back to back over the course of the hour, and presenters will each share in 6 minutes an overview of their topic and how other participants can take action. Given the quick nature of these presentations, there won't be time for audience Q&A following each presentation, so please save any questions that you have, and presenters and attendees will transition from this session to the Meetup Lounge at 3 p.m. Eastern, where presenters will host a networking table on their topic and have the opportunity to answer questions and engage in conversation with up to 30 attendees at a time. So to make this transition, once our lightning round session has ended, we'll ask each of you to switch from the agenda tab in AirMeet to the Meetup Tables tab in the navigation bar. Find the table named after the presentation topic you'd like to learn more about, hover over a chair, and hit the join button. And I will repeat those logistics at the end of the session so that you all know how to get where you'd like to go after listening to these great presentations. So this is going to be a really informative session, but before we hand it over to our first presenter, we're going to bring Michelle Medea, my colleague at Second Nature, onto the stage because she has an exciting announcement to share.
Hey, Nicole, thanks so much. And thanks, everybody. I'm photobombing this session for a quick announcement. My name is Michelle Medea. I'm Senior Director of Programs and Communications at Second Nature. And thanks again for joining us this year, especially as your willingness to engage in this new tech platform. It's a learning journey for all of us. And I wanted to take just a few minutes to announce the winners of the 3rd round of the Acceleration Fund this year. And let me go ahead and pull that slide up. Okay, so Second Nature's Acceleration Fund is dedicated to supporting climate action activities by colleges and universities that are signatories in the Climate Leadership Network and in the University Climate Change Coalition. This year, projects in the Acceleration Fund were selected that advance decarbonization, campus community partnerships, or resilience goals with a particular emphasis on how this work relates to advancing principles of climate justice and equity. Thank you to an anonymous funder, we were able to distribute up to $100,000 this year to these campuses. And because of this generosity, we were able to offer funding at 2 tiers, at the $5,000 level to support individual college and university projects, and up to $10,000 to support collaborative projects between a campus and community partners, which is different than in past years, and we're really pleased with this advancement. So funding for this year's projects for the campuses listed here will support a broad array of projects like training interns about watershed health and community engagement, creating a climate resilient landscaping demonstration project working in partnership with the campus's Indigenous community, enabling interns to work on shoreline restoration project in neighborhoods that will benefit from efforts focused on environmental justice, equity, and resilience to flooding, partnering with a local museum to support a landscaping plan that will reflect the social history by interpreting the African American community's use of native plants as resources, and providing tools to quickly distribute actionable information to residents on how to access resources and support each other during a heat wave in order to reduce heat-related mortality and morbidity. We look forward to sharing the outcomes of these efforts with the broader campus community over the next year and encourage all campuses to apply for funding again next year. So just take a minute to congratulate all of the recipients of this funding And I will turn it over to Marina to get us started in the lightning round. Thanks very much.
Okay, that took a moment because I had to put my camera back on and unmute myself. And hopefully you folks can see my screen as well. So hi everyone, I'm Marina Severnowski, Head of Sustainability at Schroders. And the indigenous land that I occupy is on the border between the Merrick and Massapequa's native lands on Long Island in New York, where the towns have actually retained those names. And my town, Wantagh, was named after a sachem or a chief of the Merauke and Montauk tribes. So in my 6 minutes, I wanted to highlight the work Schroders is doing around the integration of ESG options into defined contribution plans. And first, on this slide, I wanted to reference the why. Why should we do this? Now, this page refers to the U.S. retirement survey that we did in 2021, but actually, this was cited, the survey that we did was cited in the recent RFI that was issued by the DOL on climate-related risk. And we've just completed our 2022 survey, and we'll be issuing a press release next week on it, but I can give you some key statistics ahead of time so you get a preview. So 74% of defined contribution plan participants who lack or don't know if they have ESG investment options in their plan said that they would or might increase their contribution rate if offered ESG options. And that's up from 69% who said the same thing in 2021. Of the 31% of 401k plan participants who knew that their plan offered ESG options, 9 out of 10 invested in those options, and almost 3/4, 73%, estimate that they allocate 50% or more of their assets to these socially responsible choices. And the vast majority of plan participants, 87%, said that they want their investments to be aligned with their values and that they also see ESG as a driver of performance. 78% said that they believe companies that are socially responsible, ESG focused, will have better results over time than companies not socially responsible. We agree. And finally, when asked to determine which ESG segments they would like their investments to make an impact on, plan participants who are currently invested in ESG or would be if they had the option, talked about as their kind of the highest priority. So 51% said that they are interested in employee welfare, workers, issues, living wages. 39% said the same thing about climate change, global warming, carbon reduction. 36% said the same thing about human rights, 30% about biodiversity, and 22% about diversity and inclusion. So while ESG investing is most often associated with environmental concerns like decarbonization or addressing climate change, the reality is that it covers a broad spectrum of issues. And so it can appeal to a wide variety of plan participants across gender, age, and geographic location. And consistent with other industry findings in the US, like the Just Capital survey, our own survey highlights that the top issues of interest to US investors are indeed social in nature. So focused on workers and communities. And that includes, by the way, the concept of a just transition when it comes to climate. So we think it's really important for plan sponsors to be aware and take that into account, the kind of views of participants, to ensure that the options that are offered align with participants' priorities and values. And this is a really important point and something that I have written on recently in terms of looking at ESG investing through a US lens, in that US investor priorities do differ markedly from those in Europe, where climate always tops the list. And so we have to therefore be mindful of these priorities when we engage with investors. So the next category is the how. How do we successfully integrate ESG into DC plans? And this is a preview snapshot for you of the Schroders DC ESG ecosystem offering. This is a new platform that combines Schroders' proven global strength in ESG investing with sort of tools and resources and insights that connect everything needed for the successful integration of ESG into a DC plan. Now, in the live version of the slide, the little caterpillar actually crawls along the path and then he turns into a butterfly and he flies off at the end. So we have success. And our primary point here is that choosing particular investment options for a plan is just one very small piece of what's needed for success. You can choose the very best funds and still fail in this effort entirely. if the buy-in isn't there and the uptake isn't strong. And this is why we wrap our offering around the needs of both the sponsors and the participants. So we start with upfront education of the participants, as well as surveys to establish what participants want and why, and how this aligns with the goals and objectives of the sponsoring organization, along with their fiduciary and legal obligations. And this ensures real buy-in on the initiative. And then once investment options are deployed and fully explained to participants, we continue with ongoing communication and education, resources, tools for monitoring, measuring, and reporting results, and then participant engagement via a client portal, basically an app on the phone that measures impact in real world. It allows participants to see the good that they are individually doing, as well as the good that they are doing at a group level with their fellow participants. And that way we're tapping into the drive for kind of sustainable collective action. And we think that this ongoing reporting and engagement can help to maintain the enthusiasm for these initiatives and to encourage participants to invest more, and then to really appreciate and benefit from the opportunity to integrate sustainability into their investments. So that's it. I thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to speaking with many of you at the meetup table session later, to talk about both the why and the how of integrating ESG investments into DC plans, and also my sort of personal passion point, which is the need to have a customized approach to ESG with US investors that is sort of empathetic and respectful to their values and priorities, as distinct, frankly, from those investors in Europe and other parts of the world. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Marina. And we will now bring April up onto the stage, who will be speaking to the future of academic research on climate solutions.
Thank you. My name is April Barrage, and I'm a PhD candidate at UMass Amherst. And I want to talk to you briefly about the future of academic research on climate solutions. New ideas and the demand for green technology are of the utmost importance to reach our net zero goals by 2050. Public innovation funding has been utilized to solve previous societal problems and has strategically been used to achieve specific objectives, such as federal funding of university research in the 1980s to develop the biotechnology sector. Higher education institutions provide us with the opportunity to address the demand for these green technologies that we would need. Academic research on climate solutions is essential for us to understand the human impact of climate change. There are opportunities to address climate change within the standard academic functions of teaching, outreach, and research. Colleges and universities can kind of address these disastrous climate change while bringing about the social and economic success for all members of society. As we collectively push to address the climate crisis, alongside systematic racism and economic injustice, this process can be accelerated if we have a more expansive view of what higher education can accomplish toward climate action. The climate crisis provides us with a great opportunity to expand the scope of exactly what is the goal of academic research when it comes to innovation. Academic innovation research has primarily been siloed, focusing on basic research. But now with this demand and green technology and this rise of awareness and these aggressive goals that we have, we can tackle on climate crisis by requiring participation across various academic disciplines, in particular, including social science in that conversation. Social science is extremely important to understanding the human drivers of climate change and developing appropriate communication and policy strategies in response. No single discipline can effectively advance the complex set of strategies needed to combat the climate crisis. And the impact of federal funding for academic research that focuses on climate innovation. Research can be enhanced by investing heavily in the social sciences and actively encouraging collaboration across disciplines. And so we have like the innovative piece that academic research can help with if we kind of expand the scope of public support for that. And also taking into consideration broadening the different participations of different types of academic research institutions. So not solely focusing on the traditional top high activity research schools, but also taking into consideration that there's going to be completely new labor markets as we transition to focusing on clean energy. So we'll have this synergy between workforce development, and we can have grant making to support this. So discussions of job training and diversity are extremely important. And despite the important role of research and training, the next generation of knowledge workers, having a diverse student body can help institutions build capacity to address different community issues that we see that are impacted by climate change. And then higher education institutions of all types can engage with impacted communities and work to build genuine relationships with them. Academic research on climate solutions should be inclusive and also engage with external stakeholders. So not just academic institutions talking amongst themselves, which is great, but building stronger relationships with industry professionals who have not only expertise in technology development, but also have a general understanding of the market for like climate solutions and what is exactly needed. These alternative paths to net zero emissions can have very different equitable implications across different socioeconomic groups. So the social impacts of new clean technology is going to depend significantly on the details of how they are made and disposed of. And our external stakeholders, such as industry partners and different community groups, can help address some of those needs. So we need to understand the knowledge of disadvantaged community members must be elevated and inform the research processes that generate climate solutions. In order for ARCS to achieve maximum impact, research on emissions reducing technologies or climate relevant markets should be translated into new technologies or improved products or services. The need for change in academic research on climate solutions is related to a change across all federally funded research to make it more effective at solving societal problems. So we need a greater collaboration amongst our external stakeholders, as well as more interdisciplinary research when it comes to figuring out what are going to be the brand new green technologies that are demanded. Thank you.
Thank you so much, April. We'll now bring Bill and Monique up onto the stage from the Investment Integration Project.
Oh, we made it. Thank you so much for having us here with you today. In many ways, we track along the same lines of what April was just sharing with us, a different lens. So I'm Monique Aiken, Managing Director at TIP, the Investment Integration Project, as we just said. And TIP is a consulting services and applied research firm that provides advice, thought leadership, and a turnkey solution to help investors manage systemic risks and opportunities, some of the things that April was just sharing about. I'm joined today by my colleague, Bill Burkhart, TIP's president and COO, who will shortly introduce himself. But just to share a little bit more about me, I'm the host of a podcast series called The Reconstruction with Impact Alpha, which is a digital news magazine for the impact investing space, where I'm also a contributing editor. I'm co-founder of Make Justice Normal, a growing collective seeking to open space for people working to move capital toward justice, and the Restarter Fund, an economic and climate justice-focused initiative aiming to be a small business lifeline in these unique times. I also just recently joined the steering committee for International Endowments Network. Bill, do you want to share a little bit about yourself before I kind of set the stage a little bit more about why we're here and why we're sharing about system level investing now?
Yeah, thanks, Monique. Sorry, I'm just.
Well, we could see and hear you a second ago.
And here we are.
While his audio gets sorted out, maybe I'll just keep going.
Yeah, is that better now?
You're back. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, guys. Yeah. So Bill Burkhardt. So lead the investment integration project. Really focused on really helping mobilize more private capital towards these big societal, environmental, and financial system issues. So yeah, that's me.
Well, we'll share more about the history and journey of TIP and what we do in a second, but let me just set the stage a little bit further for those folks in the room. And certainly, TIP was founded in 2015, and we are trying to connect systems thinking with investing. So just a different audience than what April was sharing about, but we're all in the same boat, but everyone has a different paddle and different size boats. And so when we think about what we need to do to drive change from an investor perspective, we are thinking about the tools and the research that's needed to basically comprehend what's happening in this world, because the COVID-19 pandemic exposed to all the global and social and financial systems that are just one disruption away from disaster in a way that made it real to more people than ever before. And really, COVID exploited a series of pre-existing vulnerabilities in our systems that have been increasing in scope and severity for decades. And despite growing awareness and activism on climate change, we know it's getting worse. So, what can we do about this? We find that people are proportionally displaced, vulnerable people all over the world, leading to mass migration and threatening jobs. And disparities in gender and racial diversity and inclusion are holding back economic growth, fracturing social cohesion. Income inequality stirs nationalistic protectionist impulses, upends democracies, and triggers trade wars. Layer into all of this the invasion of Ukraine and the awful humanitarian disaster that is, and that will also have ripple effects in the global economy. We have a bubbling cauldron on our hands. But all of that said, we do have a path to not choose extinction. And the term of art that Bill and his co-founder, Steve Leidenberg, coined, system-level investing, is both a way to think about all of these things, proactive vision, and a roadmap to action. So with that kind of setting of the stage, I'll turn it to Bill to really kind of share a little bit more about our history and what are the tools that we have to help investors kind of move along this continuum of understanding.
Awesome. That was great, Monique. So I'm going to give everybody just a baseline definition of system level investing, really explain what it is, and then give you a quick snapshot of kind of how TIP has been working with folks to move the needle with investors. So at a very high level, system level investors are going beyond portfolio construction and security selection to include the adoption of new techniques that are explicitly designed to help investors influence global systems and limit broadly occurring undesirable outcomes from the outset. So these approaches stress collaborative action, building shared knowledge bases, setting industry standards, and really creating a rising tide of investment opportunities for all investors. These investors focus on key leverage points that can strengthen overall systems, enhance their resilience, and ensure their long-term sustainability. Now, that's a big idea, right? And we've spent the past 7 years essentially helping investors bridge that divide between their portfolios and systems. And so we've done over a series of 15 different publications and creating various tools. And each of these things essentially tackle key dimensions of this process, essentially showing investors the what, why, and how of system level investment, what it means to manage system level risks and rewards, why it is imperative to do so now, and how to integrate this new way of thinking into current practice. Our new platform, Sail, a turnkey solution for integrating this focus, is just the latest tool TIP has developed for investors. And then finally, we'll be having more of this building of a community of practice, an event on April 14th, where it's essentially an investor roundtable on managing systemic risk, where we're really trying to build a big tent of investors and other key stakeholders that are helping to drive this change. And that's it.
So we'll be able to talk with anyone who wants to learn more in the breakouts in a minute. So please join us if you're curious to understand system level investing further.
Thank you so much, Monique and Bill. We'll now hand it over to Chris to talk about solar at Grinnell College. Great work, everyone, staying on time. So.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, my name is Chris Bear. I'm the Environmental and Safety Coordinator here at Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa. We're in the location of the homelands for the Iowa Nation, and more recently, the Meskwaki Nation. I was asked to talk a bit about our upcoming solar project. I was actually hoping it would be online by now, but the latest deadline is now the end of the month. So the quick technical details, it's a 4 megawatt project, bifacial panels. So the panels will generate electricity not on the front, but not only on the front, but also on the back, which are typically used on white membrane roofs, with a lot of reflection. Ours are all ground mounted. But we're hoping to gain some additional electricity from reflection from snowfall. So, or, snow covered land in the winter. So for the first time ever, I'll actually be rooting for snow, which is a little unfortunate. But some other details, pretty standard single axis tracker. It'll track sun throughout the day. We will have a 600 kilowatt Tesla battery, which will mainly be used for peak shaving in the summer months. And it'll provide roughly about a third of campus electricity. So we're real excited about that. And sort of some more of the sort of behind the scenes information about the project. Iowa is a regulated monopoly state. So Alliant Energy is our electrical utility, and we are only allowed to buy power from Alliant, with one exception. If we can have a third party provider sell power to us, as long as they're hooked up behind our meter. So we can't have an arrangement where it's put back out on the grid and we, pay them for that. It has to be behind our meter. Luckily, most of our campus is all on one primary meter. So we're already sort of set up to do that. We own all of our electrical distribution around campus. So that worked out just fine. But as most of the college universities know, we're a not-for-profit. We don't pay taxes. And so we couldn't easily take advantage of the tax credits without working with a third party. So that's why it was important that that wasn't legal when we first started looking into the project. So that was a lucky change. So we worked with a solar developer that put together a project for us, found tax investor, cash investor, wrote the contract, and essentially we don't own any of the equipment. We just signed a 20-year contract to buy all of the power from the project, and with an additional 5-year possible extension if both parties agree. Other sort of details with the contract. The contract was the most complicated part of the whole effort. And mainly because of the battery. So I'll get to that in a second. But we set up, it starts off at 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Our electricity is pretty cheap, which also made it kind of hard to justify renewables at first. But we pay a flat 8 cents a kilowatt hour, and with a 2% escalation rate per year. We were hoping to have this installed a couple of years ago. And at that time, we would have lost a little bit of money the first couple of years. But then as as Alliance rates escalated at their historic 5 to 6% rates, then that 2%, would have made up for itself in a couple of years. But the nice thing about the delay is now we'll be saving money from the get-go as soon as we turn the thing on. So it's supposed to come online at the end of April. We're super, super excited. The 600 kilowatt battery, it will almost be strictly used for peak storage. So, it won't generate a huge percentage of our electricity, but it will help us shave our peak in the summer because, as many folks are, we're on a split, our utility bill is split into a demand charge and a consumption charge, and so it will help us save quite a bit of money there. Ultimately, one reason we only went a third of campus electricity, we would have loved to go more, but that's where our cap was set. We can't export any electricity to the grid, and even with the 4 megawatts. About 4% of production will actually have to be curtailed. So there will certainly be times throughout the year where solar will be producing slightly more than our total consumption on campus. And at that time, they'll have to curtail, a few inverters and ramp down production. And so 4% wasn't enough to change the project or change the economics of the project. But, that's why we couldn't increase it beyond that. Unfortunately, things are changing in the utility world, so hopefully that'll work itself out. And lastly, I mentioned the contract was the most complicated part. It was actually the battery was the worst part, in that there was, we weren't worried about incentives for production, right? If panels go down or inverters go down, the developer is losing money as well. So there wasn't any need to have a incentive that away. But if the battery goes down, the solar farm doesn't lose money, but we do, because it's not shaving our peak. And so having an electrical engineer that understood billing demand and also battery and solar and everything else was pretty complicated. We needed an incentive that was sufficient enough to make sure the battery is working, but not onerous enough that it was hard to find investors. And so, yeah, that's all I've got.
Thank you, Chris. We'll bring Julie up onto the stage from Impacts Asset Management. And Julie, just give me 1 second here to get your slides up as well.
Thanks. I can see my slides and I can see myself, so I'm assuming the rest of you can as well. Thank you for asking me to be here. I'm Julie Gordy. I'm from Impacts Asset Management, and I live in the overlap of the Venn diagram between the Arapaho and Cheyenne nations of North America. And I'm speaking to you I'm jealous about your solar power because this is for a rare day in Colorado, we don't have any sun today, which is unusual. I'm going to talk about physical risk as a climate risk and engaging with policymakers as well as companies to address it. And I just, Surgeon General's warning, I'm going to sound a little bit like Chicken Little here, and if I do, I'm striking exactly the right note. We had a new IPCC report come out yesterday, the Working Group 3 report, that reminded us all that we are facing a train wreck. We have very little time to solve it, and it's going to hurt all of us if we don't. Physical risk is something we all know about, but there hasn't been a lot of investor action on it yet for reasons I will get to in a minute. All the indications are that physical risk will, for the average company or the average investor, be at least as much of a concern as transition risk or more. Moreover, physical risk is something that confronts every company, whether they're big emitters or not. So no matter how close you are to meeting your net zero target, you may still face physical risk. You still have climate to worry about. Slide 1, please. The next slide, please, Nicole. So these are the tips of just a few icebergs talking about physical risk. The St. Louis Fed, for example, is estimated that higher temperatures alone would reduce, excuse me, economic growth by up to 1/3 over the next century. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is that any outdoor worker could lose a lot of productivity on days that are too hot to work on. It can also impair things like crop productivity and a lot of other things that affect economic growth. The Economist Intelligence Unit estimated that at least $4.1 trillion worth of the global stock of manageable assets will be lost due to climate change by 2100. And a recent paper from the UCS, the Union of Concerned Scientists, using data from both NOAA and Zillow, which aren't combined very often, estimated that over $1 trillion worth of assets, real estate assets in the US alone, could be lost solely due to sea level rise by 2100. So if I'm not sounding like Chicken Little yet, I can get a lot worse in the topic table if you're really interested in hearing the bad news. But just because I talked about 2100 a lot does not mean that all of this is going to take decades to happen. It's happening now. We've already seen bankruptcy due to climate change. Con Edison, the New York utility, had to spend $1 billion moving the electric infrastructure of the city above what they hope will be, the limits of future Hurricane Sandys. So next slide, please. We usually talk about physical risk in 2 categories, acute and chronic. Acute risks are the ones that make the headlines. So droughts, floods, fires, cyclones, severe storms, droughts, unusual or erratic weather, things like that. Chronic risks are things like are more like ongoing conditions: heat, sea level rise, and the expansion of pests and diseases from tropical zones to temperate regions. All of those will have an economic cost to exact and investment price to pay. Both have significant impacts on corporate activity and financial performance. We've already seen one company, as I said, declare bankruptcy. That was PG&E. It's getting incredibly difficult to afford things like fire insurance in California or flood insurance in Florida. And I mentioned that Con Edison had to spend $1 billion trying to fortify the city's electric infrastructure. After Hurricane Katrina shut down the port of New Orleans, US food prices went up by 3%. So these are, again, just little, 1,000 points of darkness, I guess, is a way to put it. For investors to price physical risk adequately or accurately, we need to know two things. We need to know where companies' key operations are, because physical risk is more about where you are than what you do, and what companies are doing to mitigate or manage those risks. Right now, for the vast majority of companies, we have neither. We have asked the SEC, we petitioned the SEC to require companies to report on the locations of their key assets by precise location. Most of them will report on city or country level, which is not enough to assign physical risk to. That, or you have to assign all of the physical risks to the companies, even if their operations are on the seacoast and they may not face a certain kind of risk. They're going to get all of them. We also ask companies to do the same thing, as we did recently, asking all the companies in the S&P 500 to report on location information. And we filed 2 shareholder proposals this year, asking companies to do more of that. We're quite happy to see the SEC just proposed a new rule on climate risk disclosure that does include the disclosure of physical risk, but we think it could be stronger. So not just reporting on physical risk after the damage has occurred and assuming it was material, but disclosing location information proactively. So investors can make their own judgments about material risks and not have to rely on the company to make a materiality determination. If you want to talk more about this, come to my topic table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. I'm really blown out of the water by how timely everyone is being with their presentations. We're going to have time for a break after these before we go to the meetup tables. But for now, we will bring on our final presenter, Marshall, who will be sharing more about EPIC-N.
Hello, everyone. I'm calling in from the lands of the Kalapuya, which is now managed by the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians in the state of Oregon. I'm the program manager of EPIC-N, which is the Educational Partnerships for Innovation in Communities Network. We're a nonprofit association with members all over the world. And today I'm joined by, I'll be joined in our meetup table by our EPIC Asia Regional Coordinator, Kay Pongtuong Pakdi, who calls from Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand. Our organization supports members as they unite the human capital of universities with local governments and communities to improve the quality of life and social wealth for all involved. Our programs do that in a really particular way, and I'll talk about that briefly. But I just wanted to comment on our current status as a network association. And we have over 70 programs, many of which are involved in Second Nature. Those programs engage using existing courses with to create partnerships with local governments and community groups to tackle priorities set by those individuals. To date, our members have partnered with over 300 communities and have completed over 1,700 projects across 65 different disciplines. Today, I've put together a resource slide deck for you all to access as you see fit. I'll go through just a couple of the slides to cover to kind of entice you to join us at our meetup table and perhaps follow up with EPIC-N following this presentation. EPIC-N, again, was created to try and unite universities and local governments together in order to catalyze change based on this question. What if we could connect existing university structures, courses, and local projects at a scale that magnifies value for all? Many of our programs, on average, complete 10 to 15 projects with one municipal partner and their community partners a year. They cross disciplines, and they allow faculty to engage in an opt-in model. So that way they're participating voluntarily using their existing coursework, and often the faculty only have to point their courses in a different way than they've done in the past. Going forward in the presentation, I'm just going to be highlighting a little bit more about some recent work from our network. I'm really excited about it, but you can find in here some slides that allow you to quickly get to different places on our website to find out about all of our programs and learn about their uniqueness as well as their similarities. You can find them in the slides here. We offer a lot of different resources at EPIC-N to catalyze this work. We've collected tools from folks throughout the network, and we've also launched some new programming. Back in October of 2021, we launched a community of practice with three different community of practices focusing on these areas, and those continue today in really exciting ways. From that, I also want to highlight just some of our Asian growth. That's another big thing we've done over the last year. And surprisingly, we've learned a lot about the differences in how we have been able to honor local context as we've done the work. And a big thank you to Kay, who again will be joining us in the meetup tables, for allowing us to do that. So EPIC Asia began in 2021, and since then we've brought on a bunch of community partners or partner organizations, advisory organizations, as well as 11 universities who have local government partners who have joined them engaging in these partnerships. And I'm just going to give you a couple examples of those, but I've also provided links to various stories summarizing the work if you'd like to learn more in the slideshow. What's really exciting to me is that these programs have come to end their first round of programs just recently. Some are still finishing, but what's really exciting is that they've been able to put together multiple projects with the municipalities in one academic year. And I'm going to just highlight some of the examples and some of the pictures of the amazing work that's been going on. And you'll notice that they all differ in what they are targeting, because local governments' needs differ, and that's what we're able to do in a really amazing way. During our meetup, we will be able to discuss, we'll be able to bring the expertise that Kay and I have working with all of our member programs across the globe to any questions or concerns that you'd like to bring about how do you partner your existing university resources with the existing needs of local governments. We believe that our work is one of the many ways we can answer the call made by the IPCC report Julie just referenced. That was the press release yesterday, as well as the call from our keynotes earlier today. David Orr challenged us to think about how can we get civics into our network, into all of our disciplines. And Terry Taylor asked us to do more than just educational interventions to meet the needs of today. We believe our network has the resources, tools, and extensive experiences to help universities, local governments, community partners do just this. And we hope that you can join us to explore the stickiness of these types of relationships and partnerships.
Thank you so much, Marshall. And thank you to all of our fantastic speakers over the course of this session. You were all immensely timely with your remarks and did a great job sticking to the schedule. So I'm very happy to say that we will have time for a quick 15-minute break between these presentations and transitioning over to the meetup table section of AirMeet. So as a reminder, we will have each of these presenters hosting a networking table on their presentation topic in the Meetup Lounge, and you will all have the opportunity to ask your questions and engage in conversation with this great group. Up to 30 attendees can join a table at one time, and it's easy to hop in and out of tables if you'd like to learn about more than one topic. So please do take advantage of this feature and its interactivity. It's one of the main reasons that we chose this platform to host the summit, so we hope that it is beneficial to do so. And again, to make this transition, you should switch from the agenda tab over to the meetup tables tab in the navigation bar. Find the table that's named after the presentation topic that you'd like to learn more about, hover over a chair and hit the join button. So thank you again so much to our fantastic lightning round speakers and to all of you for joining. Feel free to shoot our support teams any messages in the AirMeet chat. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have if you have trouble joining the meetup tables or need support. So thank you again, and we'll talk soon.